Hello everyone! Welcome to Best Games Period podcast. I am Naomi, and I am missing my amazing co-host this week, Jack. But no worries, he shall be back for next week. This is a kind of special formatted podcast. It'll be a little bit shorter than you're used to. That's because it's an honorable mention. And so in honorable mentions, we go over games that we don't necessarily think are some of the best games, period, but we still want to talk about them. And before I start talking about the game that I'm nominating this week, I just want to go over a little bit of video game news that's been happening and will be happening. So first up, by the time this podcast is out, this date will already have passed, but this weekend is the latest community day from Pokemon Go, and this week it's going to be everyone's favorite little puppy thing, right? Eevee's a puppy. Anyway, it's Eevee. So on both Saturday and Sunday, there will be a ton of Eevees for the span of, oh shoot, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 hours, but Eevee will be out in the wild a ton, and there will be a chance to catch shiny Eevees, which of course is everyone's goal on Community Day, right? I am really hoping to grab a shiny Jolteon and a shiny Umbreon. Those two are probably my favorites. Umbreon just has that nice subtlety to it, and Jolteon, it's kind of like a lime electric green, and that's just kind of cool. We just won't mention shiny Espeon and the disappointment there, because Espeon is such a cool Pokemon. It's the psychic type. It's got these really cool purple colors to it. And what does Pokemon do to it in its shiny form? They give it that really bizarre, like, nuclear green color. That's just kind of unfortunate. And there are a lot of these Pokemon that are afflicted with this just kind of weird green. And that happened in the earlier generations. So anyway, we're moving forward. So Eevees caught on that day will have a chance to get a special move called Last Resort. And, you know, it's just a really good chance to actually get out in the world like Pokemon Go is intended and catch a bunch of Pokemon with your friends or make a bunch of new friends, because of course now there's the capability to make friends in the game and trade and all that good stuff, which thank you Niantic, that has just added a new element to the game. Thank you. So, and I've also noticed a bunch of people have either picked up the game again or have started playing like for the first time ever, since we're getting a new Pokemon game. Well, kind of new Pokemon game. We're getting a remastered remake. I think it's technically a remake in November when we get Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu. So that has excited a lot of people and kind of reignited the spark behind Pokemon. And I've noticed that a ton of new faces are playing this game. Not that I'm like a seasoned veteran or anything like that in this game. I've just been playing it kind of steadily throughout its cycle since it released in July 2016. And there's definitely been some down points in this game, but it's gotten a really, really solid. It's a lot of fun to play. And of course, there's still these bugs that happen every once in a while. There'll be just random crashes or extremely infuriating little stats that will just drive you insane. Anyway, before we go on a Pokemon tangent, which I am definitely able to do at any time with a snap, we also got a new trailer for a game that I'm sure everyone is excited about, and that is Red Dead 2 from Rockstar. So on August 10th, today, the day of this recording, we got a 6-minute gameplay trailer from Rockstar, kind of out of the blue, which was really awesome. It showcased a ton of things that we had not known or seen in this game yet. We got a really, really good look at the world. And that was the biggest highlight for me, is the world in this game just looks absolutely stunning. And the trailer was recorded 100% in gameplay. So it is just astounding to see what games graphics look like nowadays. It still blows my mind, even though I'm living in this moment and playing these games. Just it's a nice thing to be able to look at a game and be like, wow, this is kind of close to the pinnacle, and it's not a bittersweet moment, it's just a great moment. So we got to see a lot of the world, which is very similar, if not the same as the first game. And we get the desert, we get the forest region, we just get a nice mix of swamp, and it looks amazing. So then we also got to see the characters, and we got a solid look at our main protagonist, which is not John Marston. I can't remember his name exactly, but he is a part of this outlaw gang. We got to see these other characters as well. And then we also got to see shooting and gameplay, and we got a little bit of a teaser at the end that showed that there will be fishing. Yay. I don't know about you guys, but one of my favorite parts about the first, or I guess this is the second Red Dead game technically, was being out in the world and exploring and hunting and gathering random plants, which is kind of just a favorite pastime of mine anyway. I love when part of the game is going and picking flowers. I mean, you can't really beat that. So yeah, I'm getting really hyped up for the game's release, which will be in October, on October 26th. So pretty much the rest of 2018 is going to be packed with great games. Like next month, we're going to see Spider-Man release. We're going to get a new Rise. We're going to get the next Tomb Raider game. We're going to get a new Assassin's Creed. Like, we're just going to be bombarded. And of course, we're going to get the new Pokemon game in November. I cannot wait. So, on to the show and on to this game that, oh man. So, we've been trying something new with the podcast in general. And we're coming up with themes actually now for each month. So the theme of this month is going to be visual novels and kind of a / dating sim. So with Dream Daddy, the first show of August obviously falls into that category. So I nominated this game with that in mind. And the game is My Horse Prince, which if you haven't heard of this game, it is pretty much what you would picture, or not, depending on the type of brain you have. My brain obviously conjured up the image of a horse with a pretty boy anime face on, right? So when this game came out, and it came out in 2016, there was a little bit of a hype around it just because of how bizarre it was. It came from, I think they're a small developer. There's not really a lot of information about these guys out there. Their name is Usaya, and I'm pretty sure they're based in Japan. And Jack actually wrote an article about them a little bit back on Extra Life, so you can find that on community.extra-life.org. There we go. Or you can do a Google search of Usaya. I think it's one of the first things that pops up. So they've developed kind of a bunch of random games similar to this kind of joking nature. So some of their other games include a Pokemon-esque game where you can kind of see obvious influence. Like you can see Pikachu there and Rattata and Pidgey within the first 20 minutes of the game. And yes, I did play this game. Of course I had to. But they all have the face of an old man. And for some reason you're like capturing them for like slave labor to build your town and upgrade your town. Because of course, why not? They also have like a cute like cat game, which I have not played. Then one with a character that looks like Piccolo. And then there's a game called Radish Girl where you're a high school student and you're trying to climb up radishes. So if that kind of gives you a sense of the type of developer that Usaya is, they're definitely in the market of these bizarre kind of games. And My Horse Prince is definitely in that caliber. Although I will say that the production quality on this game and the artwork is pretty different from all of these other games. So I guess to back up a little, where do you even start with this game? It's totally great. Well, I guess the reason why I wanted to pick this game to talk about it was because of this hype that kind of surrounded it. I had always had it kind of in the back of my mind after hearing about it and seeing it release. It was just something that appealed to me. I needed to know what this game was all about. And it's a mobile game. It's got a structured story. It's the visual novel kind of thing. But obviously there's something a little off when your main character is trying to romance a horse. So it's definitely got that weird factor to it, which might throw some people off. But at the same time, this game has gotten really, really good reviews. On iOS, it has a rating of 4.8. And it seems to be the perfect opportunity to satirize the genre that it kind of sits in, and that is, of course, the dating sims and all of that. But the other thing that is kind of, and I use this word intentionally, magical about this game is that it's also able to bring out the weirdness in people. People just kind of seem to want this game to exist. They needed this game to exist. So in order to kind of demonstrate what I mean there, I'm gonna read some of the reviews that are on iTunes for this game. So this first review was written in 2017. It's written by He Loves Me 18, and they say that this game is truly life-changing. And I'll only read parts of these because they get a little long. So they say, I never knew I could live so peacefully with my horse Prince. Before meeting him, my life was dull, boring, and tough to live. When he galloped into my direction, I knew it was love at first sight. When he asked for my name, my knees turned weak, unable to let me stand. I fell into his hooves. So they kind of go on this nice little story tangent for a while, and I'll read another one. And this one is appropriately from Gay for Horse Daddy. My life was perfect. I had a lovely girlfriend named Amelia. I was an electrical engineer. I repeat, my life was perfect. Then I found this game. I quickly became obsessed with it. I found the presence of the horse prince comforting. I no longer cared about Amelia. She couldn't offer me the same joy that Yuma could. As soon as I saw his gentle expression, I knew it was meant to be. My girlfriend would eventually die or move on, but Yuma would not. His glistening eyes seemed to smile into my soul. So yeah, those are the top reviews in the iTunes store for this game. So you can kind of see that people really get into it because it took a lot of effort to write those reviews. They're I would say about 300 words long. And they create their own little world just from the premise of this game. They don't really talk about the game itself, which is kind of hilarious. But that's what I mean about the kind of specialness or magic that this game seems to entice or incite from people. I just needed to see what that was about. So the actual structure of the game and the story of the game is you are this girl, you're this young girl, and you can name her whatever you want to be. So you can be, your gamer tag, yada yada. So this main protagonist is sick of being alone and sick of not having a love in her life because she works all the time. So she decides to remedy that for herself, and she goes out to the countryside and visits a ranch because she figures that there will be a bunch of hot guys around horses, because I guess that's where hot guys go, is hanging out around horses. So instead, she meets Yuma, this person-faced horse, and she is immediately freaked out, but at the same time kind of entranced by this face. Like, at first she's like, oh my god, he's really hot, and then she's like, wait, what? This is weird. So she's kind of going through this juxtaposition within herself of being really attracted to this horse-faced person, but being totally weirded out that this is even happening. So this isn't a world where every once in a while there's just horse-faced people. This is a bizarre, perhaps supernatural occurrence, who knows? And the game itself actually tries to explain what's happening. So Yuma is taken care or cared for by this ranch hand, And he tells her, or he's weirded out that she sees this human face in this horse, but he offers the explanation that since she is the year of the horse, she sees this face. Apparently that's a phenomenon that happens with other young females who are born in the year of the horse. He doesn't see this face, and from the interactions he has, it doesn't seem like he hears Yuma either, because Yuma talks to you. He definitely does. That's a really big part of the game. Interesting. Anyway, so your protagonist is inexplicably and uncontrollably attracted to Yuma, this horse. And so the actual gameplay consists around training Yuma for his upcoming horse races. Because, of course, so there's different sections. In the first one, I think you are feeding Yuma carrots, and so Yuma can be a better horse. Sure, that makes sense. But as the chapters go along, and there are 10 chapters, and 3 additional ones were added on after the game's release, I am actually currently on chapter 10, so I have not completely finished this game, but I'm very close. And I will update you guys on the next full episode next week, I promise. Each chapter kind of goes along the story, kind of. So the next chapter, I believe chapter 2, you are with Yuma and he is cooking you breakfast lovingly. And this sequence may or may not be a dream. I didn't completely pick up on that. He is cooking you leek soup, I think, leek miso soup or something like that. And so your job is to fill up his meter with these leeks that you cut up. And of course, he has a corresponding energy bar to go along with that because it's a mobile game and we need to have some sort of way to measure it, right? And I will note right now that I played the full ad version, so I did not pay the 99 cents to remove the ad, so this might make the game completely different. So you talk to Yuma, and that fills up his energy bar, and then each time you click on the leeks that you cut up, it's like a little image, you use a little bit of energy. So that's kind of the structure. But in order to fill those chances again in that bar, you can watch an ad, and every once in a while these ads will pop up anyway. So it is pretty inundated with ads, so that definitely that influenced my experience in playing this game. So it got a little, not just a little, I guess it got pretty bizarre pretty quick. So this horse is in a house and he's chopping up leeks, and he's chopping a ton of leeks because obviously you have to do that to fill this meter because it's a game. But the kind of cool part is that your main character comments on this and she's like, wow, that's kind of a lot of leeks. What is he making? And then as it goes on and you fill up the meter more and you cut more leeks, she's like, okay, that's definitely way too many leeks. Like, so it's just kind of a cool fourth wall break, I guess. And she does that throughout the different chapters. Like, there's a chapter where he's surfing, because again, why not? And then she'll make a comment like, why are we doing this? And I agree, why am I making this horse surf? So you kind of go along and your character is falling in love with this horse, and this horse, since it's a horse, is training for a big race. Yeah. So that's kind of where I get disconnected, right? Is this story, I think there just could have been a lot more opportunity to write satire into it. Instead, it kind of came off a little disjointed. Actually, not a little, quite a lot disjointed. And I kind of attribute that to my overall sense of the game, in that it wasn't weird enough for me. And that's kind of hard to say because this game is about dating a human-faced horse. But so I'll make my point, and that is, I think that they had a real big opportunity here to really satirize the crap out of this genre, and they didn't really take it. and they just kind of made a weird game instead. You know, I think it neither needed to be that complete satire, right? The scathing satire, or just really, really bizarre. And it didn't really fall into either of those camps for me. It just kind of fell right in the middle. And I just think that was a pretty big missed opportunity. And that's probably why people, or maybe not why, but people just kind of built their own stories around it, you know, instead of really hanging on what this game actually consisted of. It was more about the premise that a game like this actually exists rather than the gameplay itself. It kind of built this ethos around itself, and I understand that. Like, these weird games seem to have this mythical property around them that draws people in. It's like a game like Goat Simulator. Goat Simulator is so bizarre, and we're so fascinated that it exists in general that it kind of leans on that merit more than the gameplay. Like, I played Goat Simulator for probably like 2 or 3 hours, and that was just to play with the different ways I can mess with the game, like make it a Satan goat and make it slow motion and stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily, well, no, it was not at all about the story, because there's not really a story. There is just like objectives in that game. But we still had this fascination with this game nonetheless, and I think it kind of has the same effect as My Horse Prince. So I would definitely say that the strong points of this game were more in the snippy dialogue that was kind of questioning the world around it, although I think it could have done more. And the weak spot was definitely the gameplay itself, just because it got really tedious really quickly, and it took a long time to play. Like, I have been grinding this game for about 3 days now, and that's playing it as much as I can. It's a mobile game, and you have to wait for it to charge, so, you know, I'm playing it pretty consistently to try to get through the story, and it's a lot longer than I was hoping. And that's not to say that the length of the game is a bad thing. It's more that it was kind of long just for the sake of being long. So it could have done with maybe just a little bit less of making the scale just a little bit less, because of course in most games you scale up the amount of like energy that you need to fill as the levels go on. It gets harder, you know, basically. So I think they could have adjusted that so it's not quite as bad, or I don't know, make it a different kind of mini game where it's actually a game. And I don't know if I touched on this, but there is a mechanic where you actually talk to Yuma to refill your energy bar, and there's kind of a mini game in there. You talk to him, you have a conversation, he says something, and you have 3 different options. So based on what you respond and say, you get, you know, a bad, good, or excellent level. So with bad, you lose 15% of your energy. Good, you gain 15%. And with excellent, you gain 30%. So there's kind of, they had an opportunity again there to play with the satire of the genre. Instead, I think they kind of played it safe. There are some points, I will say, that do kind of try to jump into the satire. Like, the horse kind of becomes possessive. Like, there'll be a part where he says something like, do you think I'm a great racer? Or something. And you say something like, yeah, you're the greatest racer ever. And then he's like, oh, that's so cute. Like, but only think I'm the greatest racer, or you can only be that cute around me, you know? So there's a little bit of it there, but again, they could have pushed that envelope. They had a real opportunity there. They could have gone full creepy or full sappy. Who knows? And another note I want to point out is that there was kind of this disconnect between Yuma and the main character and how they kind of interacted throughout the story. So, and what I mean by that is Yuma seems to kind of ignore the main character in both the I guess cinematic parts of the story as well as those like mini games. And that might be trying to comment on how kind of vapid or empty the conversations in dating sims can be. But it kind of just made me disconnect from these characters and not really want to invest in how the story went along. Because I think any game, even if it is a dorky game that is just trying to be goofy, I think you still need to have your audience connect with your main characters. You have to have them connect to the story. You just have to have something. You have to have that villain or conflict. And this game kind of didn't have that. They tried to add it more towards the end chapters. And I won't spoil anything too much here, but there's another character that's introduced that kind of adds this tension. But again, I'm not really caring if Yuma wins the big race or if your main character figures out her stuff and decides if she's gonna marry or whatever with this horse, or if she's just gonna come to terms with the fact that she's in love with the horse. There was just not that connection for me. But anyway, this segment is just meant to discuss these games that are important, and I think that My Horse Prince, be it a simple mobile game that anyone can play for free, I think that it is still important to this genre. I think because of the buzz that it created, it is important to talk about, like why people were drawn to this game, why it exists in general. It's an important part of this bizarre genre that has kind of creeped its way into our consciousness and into gaming, kind of underneath it all. But yeah. So we'll be back next week with the more standard format, the longer show, and Jack, of course, will be back, and the show will be complete, and my heart will be complete again. So next week we're going to continue with our theme, and we're going to be talking about a game that had a similar phenomenon and went kind of crazy a couple months ago when it came out, and that is Doki Doki Literature Club. So if you want to play the game and listen to the podcast, so you can listen to the podcast spoiler free, I highly recommend that. This game has, we'll call it twists and turns, but I will give a small warning there. Be sure you read the descriptions on the game just to make sure that this doesn't have any content that's gonna cause any problems for you. That's all I'll say. But this game is actually free on Steam for sure, and I think it's also on itch.io. Oh, and a little bit of podcast news for you guys. We did start an Instagram account, so you can find us at Best Games Period. We would love to hear from you and see your beautiful pictures on that site if you want to follow us there. And of course, we will have regular updates on when shows are being posted and all of that. And with that, you can find this podcast and all of our previous podcasts on SoundCloud and Libsyn, iTunes, and then of course the wonderful community.extra-life on the Extra Life website. And with that, I wanted to change things up a little bit, so I will be seeing you on the Flippy Dippy. Bye, guys.
Spade a spade. I'm a success. I read about it in a magazine. I'm popular. I'm captain of the yacht club. been this storybook champion, this knight in shining armor who can do no wrong. But what they don't do is they don't look inside the armor. Because they can't. That armor is yours. They'll throw everything they have at you and assume it all just bounces off. What they don't see are the people in your life standing in the way. A shield against the world so you can achieve that one thing you've always wanted. The armor is just for show. Nobody can be an empty suit of armor. Everyone has a past to dig up. But for me, that's always been very personal, very literal. Like with an actual shovel.